Good evening, members. I welcome you everyone to KCA's today's event, all about new taxation regime section 115 BAC of Income Tax Act 1961. I hope everyone is awaiting for the wonderful session to be presented by our CA Deepak Chopra. To brief him about Sir, he is a fellow chartered accountant from Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, passed out in the year 2011. And his passion for income tax is what led him to take classes for CA and CS students. And he is a regular faculty member of Bangalore branch of ICAI on direct tax classes specifically for the CA final students. And CA Deepak Chopra is also a resource person on various forums on direct tax, including forums like Bangalore, Davangere, Tumkur, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chittoor, Hubli, Shimoga, Calicut, and Udupi branches. He's also been a faculty for officers of Income Tax Department at Direct Tax Regional Training Institute at Bangalore. Currently, he is a partner in Deepak Neeraj and Associate and heading the Direct Tax Division. We are privileged to have you, sir, today, and we are very much thankful to you for accepting our invitation for addressing the gathering. And I request each attendees to post your question and answer in the question and a box only and not on chat box because it would be difficult for us to take it up. So over to Sri Deepak Chopra for the presentation.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for the introduction. I welcome all the members once again. I wish them a very happy and a healthy day. So this session is titled KSCS Shorts. So the idea is to be crisp and to be to the point. So bearing this in mind, we'll spend no further time on pleasantries and we'll straight away kickstart with the topic for the day. Give me a moment to load my presentation. And to get my controls right, give me just a second. Right. Thank you. My presentation is visible, madam. If you could just confirm.
Yes, sir. It is visible clearly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll begin our session with a broad overview of 115 BAC. As we are all aware, it's a concessional tax regime which has come into force from this assessment year 21-22. It provides an option to the SSC to pay taxes on lower rates at reduced slab rates, but at the same time, it takes away certain benefits by way of denial of exemptions, deductions, and allowances. Added to these, we have provisions under 115 BAC pertaining to opting into this, opting out of it, and of course, there are provisions for violation of the requirements or conditions of 115 BAC. So what you're seeing in front of your screen is the broad summary of the legal provisions of 115 BAC. It's a relatively small section comprising of 5 subsections and 4 provisos, beginning with subsection 1, which is the core of the section and which is where we will find the concessional tax rates. Subsection 2 gives us the conditions. It is here where the benefits have to be foregone in order to be eligible for the concessional tax rates under subsection 1. Subsection 3, under this subsection, there are certain losses and depreciation which will lapse. Then there is a proviso to subsection 3, which provides for adjustment in respect of brought forward unabsorbed depreciation. Subsection 4 gives a certain relief to units of International Financial Services Center. Subsection 5 provides for the manner of opting into 115 BAC, and the proviso to subsection 5 provides for the manner of opting out of 115 BAC. Then there is first proviso to 115 BAC subsection 1, which provides for consequences of violating the conditions given to us under subsection 2. And then there is a second proviso, which provides for some additional consequence in case a business SEC violates the conditions of subsection 2. So with this broad legal outlook, we will now delve into the topic in more detail. So the approach shall be that we will go through the Bare Act provisions and then finally drill down into issues and then conclude our session with a Q&A session towards the end of the session. So beginning with 115 BAC subsection 1. So what you're seeing in front of your screen is the Bare Act reproduction of subsection 1. I have not done any alteration to the language of subsection 1. I've just broken it down into points for ease of reading. So we'll give a plain read of the subsection and then we'll try to analyze each of the points that we have. So it reads, notwithstanding anything contained in this act, but subject to the provisions of this chapter, the income tax payable in respect of the total income of a person, being an individual or Hindu undivided family, for any previous year relevant to the assessment year beginning on or after 1st day of April 2021, shall, at the option of such person, be computed at the tax rate given in the following table if the conditions contained in subsection 2 are satisfied. So, the section begins with a non-obstant clause, notwithstanding anything. So it overrides all other provisions of the Act, but is subject to the provisions of this chapter. Now, this chapter refers to Chapter 12 of the Income Tax Act, which begins with Section 110 and ends with Section 115 BBG. So 115 BAC of the Act would override all other provisions, but what it will not override is Section 110 to 115 BBG. Now, as we are all aware, 110 to 115 BBG gives us special rate of tax for specific items of income. To give you examples, 112 will say long-term capital gain is chargeable to tax at 20%. 112A would say long-term capital gain on sale of equity share is chargeable to tax at 10%. 111A, short-term capital gain on sale of equity shares 15%. 115 BBE, 60% rate of tax on income which is added under 68-69. So these specific items of income which are chargeable to tax under special rates under 110 to 115 BBG would continue to be taxed at those rates. Any income which does not fall into this bracket of 110 to 115 BBG, which we in normal parlance refer to as normal income, would suffer tax at the rates given to us under 115 BAC. So the third bullet says this section shall be applicable to a person being individual or Hindu undivided family. So only an individual and a HUF is eligible for 115 BAC. All other categories of persons are outside the ambit of 115 BAC. Now, question here arises is, would a non-resident individual and a non-resident HUF also be eligible for 115 BAC? Now, if one were to closely read the section nowhere qualifies an individual or HUF with the word resident, nor is there any disqualification to say a non-resident shall not be eligible for 115 BAC. So the necessary conclusion that will have to be drawn here is that 115 BAC provisions are available not just to a resident individual and resident HUF, but it is also available to a non-resident individual and a non-resident HUF. Now contrast this with 115 BAA, 115 BAB, which are also concessional tax regimes available for companies, but then those are regimes applicable only to domestic companies. 115 BAD as well, which talks of concessional tax regimes of a cooperative society, is also restrictive only to resident cooperative societies. But then 115 BAC in that sense is unique in the sense that it not only extends the benefit to a resident, but it also extends the benefit to a non-resident individual and a non-resident HUF as well. Now this section is effective assessment year 21-22. So the current tax filings that we are doing is the first year wherein we shall be applying the provisions of 115 BAC. Shall at the option of such person. So this is an optional tax regime. So there is no mandate on anybody to follow this. It is an optional regime and it is to the option of the assessee and not to the option of the department. So it is not the department who is going to choose for you whether you pay tax under the concessional tax regime or the normal tax regime. The choice is that of the assessee himself. So tax shall be computed at the rate given in following table, which is our next screen, if the conditions contained in subsection 2 are satisfied. So the conditions are in the screen after our immediate screen. So here is the table which gives us the rates of tax. So first 2,50,000 of the income is exempt. Thereafter, for every increase in income by 2,50,000, the rate of tax increases by 5%, such that you will hit the 30% bracket on incomes exceeding 15 lakh, as against our normal tax regime, wherein the 30% bracket is triggered on incomes exceeding 10 lakh. So at 15 lakh, assessee opting for the concessional tax regime will pay a tax of 1,87,500 as against under the normal regime wherein an assessee on 15 lakh is required to pay a tax of 2,62,500. So the maximum tax benefit that is available under this scheme is rupees 75,000 only. Now this 75,000 tax benefit does not come free of cost. It comes at a cost, and the cost is you will have to forego a set of exemptions, deductions and allowances which are given to us under subsection 2. So subsection 2 in all gives you 4 clauses, beginning with the first clause, which gives you a long list of benefits that will have to be foregone, starting with section 10 subsection 5, that is your leave travel allowance, section 10 subsection 13a HRA house rent allowance, 10 subsection 14 special allowances except prescribed items. So except prescribed items, we have 4 exceptions under rule 2bb sub rule 1, clause A, clause B, clause C, dealing with travel and tour allowance, daily allowance and conveyance allowance. These 3 shall be available, and there is a 4th exception by way of 11th item to the table given under sub rule 2, which is transport allowance in case of a disabled, that is 3,200 per month. So barring these 4 items of allowances, rest everything that is given to us under 1014, your uniform allowance, academic allowance, research allowance, all of these shall not be available as deduction if 115 BAC has been opted for. 10 clause 17 allowances available to MPs and MLAs. 1032 exemption for minors income up to 1,500. 10AA exemption for SEZ units. Section 16 deductions, that is your standard deduction of 50,000, entertainment allowance and profession tax. So none of these would be available if an assessee opts for 115 BAC. Section 24 subsection B, which talks of interest on borrowing in respect of a house property. Not entire interest is disallowed if the interest is in respect of a house property referred to in subsection 2 of section 23. So section 23 subsection 2 refers to a self-occupied property and includes a property which an assessee could not occupy by himself on account of his employment or his business being on a different location. So interest on a self-occupied property is prohibited under subsection 2. Interest on a deemed let out property or on a let out property can still be claimed. 32 subsection 1 clause 2a additional depreciation. 32 AD investment in new plant or machinery in notified backward areas. Tea, coffee, rubber development account, site restoration fund. And 35, there is a certain series of deductions which will not be available. So what is prohibited is section 35 subsection 1 clause 2, 2a, 3 and 35 2AA. Now all of these, if you were to closely analyze, deal with deductions on account of contributions or donations made. For instance, subsection 1 clause 2 deals with contributions made to universities, colleges, institutions, associations towards scientific research. Clause 2a is contributions made to an approved company for scientific research. Clause 3 is contributions made towards research in the area of statistical research or social science. Our Institute of Chartered Accountants is ICI is registered under this. 35 2AA speaks of deduction available in respect of contribution made to national laboratory, IIT or universities for a approved scientific research product. So all of these shall not be available, but what will be available is the other sections of other provisions of 35, that is 35 subsection 1 clause 1, which deals with revenue expenditure incurred prior to commencement of business or post commencement of business. 35 subsection 1 clause 4, that is capital expenditure excluding land available to a company carrying on scientific research expenditure. 35 2AB, revenue and capital expenditure available to a company carrying on research in the area of biotechnology. So these expenses which are incurred by the entity itself is still available. What is permitted, what is prohibited is deduction on account of contribution made to other entities. 35 AD, investment linked deduction. We have a list of entities there, right? 2-star plus hotel, 100 plus bed hospital. So all of that would also not be available. 35 CCC, expenditure on agriculture extension product. 57 2A, 1/3 of family pension, that deduction will also not be available. All deductions under chapter 6A except 80 CCD subsection 2, that is employer's contribution to pension fund, 80JJAA, that is deduction for additional employee cost, these would be available. So 80CCD subsection 2, 80JJAA, barring these two, rest everything that is available to a normal SSE under Chapter 6A would be disallowed in the hands of an SSE who opts for a concessional regime under 115 BAC. And there is one more exception under Chapter 6A, that is 80LA. That exception is given to us not within subsection 2, but that exception is given to us under subsection 4. We'll come to it in a short while. So this was about list of benefits which will have to be foregone under clause 1 of subsection 2. Clause 2 of subsection 2 further goes on to say, you will not be allowed set off of any loss carried forward or depreciation from earlier assessment year if such loss or depreciation is attributable to any of the deductions referred to in clause 1. So if you have any brought forward unabsorbed losses or brought forward unabsorbed depreciation, and your brought forward losses or depreciation has any of the prohibited items of deductions and allowances under clause 1, if that is forming part of your brought forward losses, then we will not allow you to set off losses brought forward to that extent. To explain with a small example, to explain with a simple example, let's say you have unabsorbed depreciation loss to the tune of 50 lakh. Now, out of this 50 lakh that you have brought forward, there is a component of additional depreciation which you have claimed in earlier years, and it is sitting in this sum of 50 lakh. So let's say this additional depreciation is worth 30 lakhs. So subsection 2 clause 2 tells us that this 30 lakh of additional depreciation which is sitting in your brought forward unabsorbed depreciation shall not be allowed to be set off in the current year. So set off is prohibited under subsection 2. Will it be allowed to be carried forward? That is a question which is answered under subsection 3. We'll park that question on pause for a while. Coming to clause B. So clause B treats without set off of any loss under the head income from house property with any other head of income. So a loss under the head income from house property could be set off against other heads of income, but if you've opted for this concessional tax regime, this set off will also be prohibited. This set off will also not be permitted. Clause 3, by claiming depreciation under section 32, except under clause 2A, that is your additional depreciation, determined in the prescribed manner, and that prescribed manner is given to us under rule 5, which tells us that if you are an SSE who's opted for concessional tax regime, then the maximum rate of depreciation that shall be allowed in your hands shall be 40%. So tomorrow, let's say if government comes up with a new line item of depreciation, let's say on EV vehicle, government decides that depreciation shall be henceforth allowed on EV vehicles at the rate of 60%. Now that 60% would be available only to normal SSE. A SSE who has opted for concessional tax regime will have to restrict his depreciation claim to 40% only. Fourth and the last in the series of subsection 2, without any exemption or deduction for allowances or perquisite by whatever name called, provided under any other law for the time being in force. So what is subsection? What is clause 4 prohibiting? Clause 4 is prohibiting any exemption, any deduction in respect of allowances or perquisites under any other law for the time being in force. So if there is any exemption or deduction granted in respect of any allowance or perquisite outside the income tax law under any other law which for the time being is in force, those allowances and perquisite exemptions and deductions shall not be available to you, and those allowances and perquisites will be fully taxable. A simple example that I can think of is the judges' allowance given to judges of High Courts and Supreme Court is exempt not under Income Tax Act, it is exempt under Judges Act. So that exemption will not be available if 115 BAC has been opted by those judges. Another example that I can give you is allowances given to employees of United Nations Organization. So allowances to employees of UNOs is exempt under United Nations Immunity Act 1947, not under Income Tax Act. But then if the employee of UN opts for 115 BAC, then that employee shall not be eligible for that deduction which is available to him under the UN Act of 1947. Now, this one issue that had come in my mind while I was going through the provisions of 115 BAC, there is another exemption which is available to us, a pretty relevant and important exemption given to us under Right to Fair Compensation Act of 2013. So as we are all aware, if there is any compulsory acquisition happening under the new compulsory acquisition law of 2013, and if there is any award which is determined under the new law, section 96 of Right to Fair Compensation Act of 2013 exempts any levy of income tax on the compensation awarded under the new law. Now, would that exemption also be hit by this clause 4 is something that I wondered. But then in my mind, what is prohibited under clause 4 is only exemption or deduction in respect of allowances and perquisite. Now, what is an allowance? Allowance is a money that is recurringly being paid to a person to meet his expenses. What is a perquisite? Perquisite is a benefit that a person derives from his job or from his position. Now, this compensation which is determined, which is awarded under the Right to Fair Compensation Act, is neither an allowance, it is neither a perquisite. It is a compensation for compulsory acquisition of his land. And therefore, in my personal view, this exemption available to us under 96 of the Right to Fair Compensation Act will not be hit by this clause 4 of 115 BAC subsection 2. So a person opting for 115 BAC shall still be entitled to section 96 benefit of Right to Fair Compensation Act. Moving on with subsection 3. So subsection 3 reads, the loss and depreciation referred to in clause 2 of subsection 2. Now, clause 2 of subsection 2 we just read, no? It denied set off of brought forward losses and unabsorbed depreciation, and it also denied set off of current year house property loss against other items of income. So subsection 3 now reads, the loss and depreciation referred to in clause 2 of subsection 2 shall be deemed to have been given full effect, and no further deduction for such loss or depreciation shall be allowed for any subsequent year. So subsection 2, clause 2 told us that we will not allow you to set off those losses, set off that depreciation for the current year. Subsection 3 is now telling us that that loss will be deemed to have been given full effect, meaning you shall not be allowed to even carry forward those losses and those depreciation which have been denied to you under subsection 2, clause 2. To explain this better with an example, I'll continue with my earlier example of wherein we had 50 lakh of unabsorbed depreciation loss comprising of 30 lakh of additional depreciation loss. So subsection 2, clause 2 told us this 30 lakh will not be allowed to be set off in the current year. Subsection 3 is now telling us that it shall not be allowed to be carried forward as well. So in effect, it is going to lapse. But then there is a small relaxation given under proviso to 115 BAC subsection 3. And this relaxation, mind you, is available only with regards to unabsorbed depreciation loss, which is lapsing under subsection 2 and subsection 3. So what the proviso effectively tells us is that portion of unabsorbed depreciation loss, which is lapsing on account of application of provisions of subsection 3, will be added to the opening WDV of your block of assets. Right? So let's say the opening WDV of my block of assets was 100 lakh, and there is a 30 lakh of additional depreciation loss which is now lapsing because of subsection 3 and subsection 2. This 30 lakh will be added to my opening WDV of 100. So my opening WDV will now become 130, and I will now claim depreciation on 130 as against 100 which was otherwise available to me. So it's a small relaxation, as I said, available only with regards to unabsorbed depreciation. Other items of losses which lapse under subsection 3 lapse for good, and there's no further benefit or relaxation available with regards to those losses. Subsection 4, as I said earlier, gives a small relaxation to an individual or HUF who has a unit in an international financial services center. So if you have a unit on the International Financial Services Center, notwithstanding what was said in the subsection 2, you will continue to enjoy deduction under 80 LA, right? Something which we do not encounter in our daily practice, not a very relevant provision for a daily practice, which is why we'll not spend too much time on this, and we'll move forward to the provisos which are available to subsection 1. So the first proviso to 115 BAC subsection 1 provides for consequences of default or consequences of violating the provisions or conditions of subsection 2. Now, without getting into the WARE Act provision, I'll try to explain this with a small example. Let's say you are an SSE who is opted for 115 BAC. So you've computed tax on your income at the concessional tax slabs that we've just seen. But at the same time, you have gone ahead and also claimed relief or deduction under section 80C. Now, in this scenario, how should the income of the SSC and how should the tax of the SSC be computed? Logically, there are two options available to us. Option one, deny deduction under 80C, recompute the income and compute taxes at the rates given under 115 BAC. That's option one. Option two is, do not disturb the deduction claimed by the SSC under 80C. Let the income remain as was computed by the SSC, but apply rates given to us under the normal tax slabs and not the rates given to us under 115 BAC. So logically, these are the two options available to us. Now, law under first proviso to subsection 1 subscribes to the second option. So what is effectively told to us under first proviso is, if you are an SSC who has claimed 115 BAC and also claimed any of the prohibited items or benefits under subsection 2, then we will disregard your option to apply 115 BAC to your income computation. We will compute your income normally as we would to an SSC who has not opted 115 BAC. And the tax rates as is applicable to a normal SSC is what will apply to you. So in effect, your option to exercise concessional tax regime under 115 BAC shall become invalid. It shall become invalid and your income shall be computed as if that option had not been exercised for that assessment year at all. Right? So I'll repeat, the first proviso tells us, if you are an SSC who has violated subsection 2, that is, you have opted for 115 BAC, but at the same time gone on to claim any of the prohibited list of benefits under subsection 2, then your option under 115 BAC shall become invalid and your income shall be computed as if no option was exercised for that assessment year. So for that assessment year, 115 BAC benefit will not be available to you and your income will be computed under normal tax provision. So that is about first proviso to subsection 1. The second proviso adds one more condition, adds one more consequence of violating subsection 2 in case of an SSC who has income under the head business or profession. So a SSC who has business income, if he is to violate the provisions of subsection 2, then the option that he's exercised under 115 BAC for the current year will become invalid and he will be debarred from exercising the option under 115 BAC for all subsequent years. Right? I'll repeat this. This is critical and important for us. A normal SSC meaning a SSC who does not have business income. A SSC without business income violates 115 BAC. 115 BAC becomes invalid for that assessment year alone. But if a business SSC violates 115 BAC, then for the year of violation and for all subsequent years, 115 BAC shall no longer be available to him. So he will no longer have the option of concessional tax regime. So he's thrown out of 115 BAC for his lifetime. Moving on to 115 BAC subsection 5. So subsection 5 provides for the manner in which a SSC has to opt into the scheme. So we've seen this is an optional regime. So this option has to be exercised by the SSC. So SSC has to intimate to the department in some manner that yes, I wish my income to be computed under 115 BAC. So that manner is given to us under subsection 5. So it reads, there's been some confusion surrounding this. So we'll be a little slow here and we'll read through the BARE Act provisions of 115 BAC subsection 5 to understand this better. So it reads, nothing contained in this section shall apply unless option is exercised in the prescribed manner. So option has to be exercised in the prescribed manner and this prescription is given to us under Rule 21 AG. Rule 21 AG in turn tells us to exercise your option under 115 BAC, please file Form 10IE. Right? So if you wish 115 BAC to be applicable to you, you under Rule 21 AG have to file a form called Form 10IE. Right? Now this provision further reads, so by the person having income from business or profession on or before the due date specified under subsection 1 of section 139, for furnishing the return of income for any previous year relevant to the assessment year commencing on or after 1st day of April 2021, and such option once exercised shall apply to all subsequent assessment years. So clause 1 is further telling us that if you are an SSC who has income from business or profession, so if you are an SSC with business income, you will have to exercise this option. That is, you will have to file this Form 10IE on or before the due date under 139(1). And once a business assessee files this Form 10IE on or before due date under 139(1), this option to compute income under 115 BAC shall apply to him for all subsequent assessment years. Now, if you're an assessee who does not have income under the head business or profession, so if you're a person having income other than the income referred to in clause 1, that is non-business income, then along with the return of income to be furnished under subsection 1 of section 139 for a previous year relevant to that assessment year. So if a business assessee opts into 115 BAC, he will have to opt in by filing Form 10IE before 139(1), and once this is filed, it shall apply to him for all subsequent years. A non-business assessee will also have to file Form 10IE again within 139(1) due date, and once he opts into a non-business assessee opts into 115 BAC, that opt-in will be applicable only for that assessment year. Right? So a business assessee and a non-business assessee both have to opt into the scheme before due date under 139(1). A business assessee opts into the scheme applies to him for his lifetime for all subsequent assessment years, but a non-business assessee, the scheme will apply to him only for that assessment year for which he's opted. For the second assessment year and third assessment year, he will again have a choice to either apply concessional tax regime or apply normal tax regime. So subsection 5 has told us the manner of opting into the regime. The proviso to subsection 5 gives us the manner of opting out of the regime. Right now, this opt-out option is available only to a business assessee, because for a non-business assessee, anyways, it's a 1 year validity. It's applicable only for 1 year. So second year, there's no question of he opting out. He again has a choice of opting in or staying with the normal tax regime. So a non-business assessee, the proviso reads, provided that the option under clause 1, once exercised for any previous year, can be withdrawn only once for a previous year other than the year in which it was exercised, and thereafter the person shall never be eligible to exercise such option under this section except where such person ceases to have any income from business or profession, in which case option under clause 2 shall be available to him. So what the proviso says, tells us is, a non-business assessee who has opted for a business assessee who has opted for 115 BAC under clause 1, because he's opted under clause 1, the scheme is meant to be applicable to him for all subsequent assessment years. Now, such an assessee can withdraw from the scheme. He can opt out of the scheme, but this option of withdrawal is only once in a lifetime. It's only once in a lifetime. And the day and the year in which he withdraws from the scheme, he shall be debarred from the scheme for lifetime. He shall never ever be eligible for the scheme, with one exception. The exception is the year in which he ceases to have income from business. He will have an option to enter into the scheme via clause 2. So a business assessee opts in, the scheme applies to him for lifetime. He has an option of opting out. He opts out, the scheme is not available to him for his lifetime, with only exception being if he ceases to have business income, then he can re-enter the scheme under clause 2 of subsection 5 of section 115 BAC. Now please pit proviso to subsection 5 against second proviso to subsection 1. Now both these provisos talk of non-eligibility or non-availability of the scheme to an assessee who's exiting from the scheme, right? I'll just scroll back slide over here. So second proviso to 115 BAC also told us the same thing. So if a business assessee exits from the scheme, it shall become invalid to him for all subsequent assessment years. Subsection 5 is also telling the same thing. It says if a business assessee withdraws from the scheme, he shall never be eligible for the scheme for his lifetime. The difference between proviso to subsection 5 and second proviso to subsection 1 is the manner of exit. Under subsection 1, second proviso, you are thrown out of the scheme for violating the provisions of subsection 2. Under proviso to subsection 5, you are voluntarily withdrawing out of the scheme. So that is a kick out of the scheme versus a graceful exit over here. So if you are thrown out of the scheme under second proviso, you will never be able to re-enter the scheme. But if you walk out of the scheme by withdrawing from the scheme under proviso to subsection 5, there's a small window available to you. You may re-enter the scheme provided you do not have any income under the head business or profession. So that's a key difference you'll have to bear in mind. If you violate, there is no second chance. But if you're opting out, there is a second chance in the sense that the year in which you cease to have business income, you can again walk into the scheme. So rule 21 AG, so sub rule 1 says the option to be exercised in accordance with provisions of subsection 5 shall be by filing a form, that is form 10IE. Sub rule 2 goes on to say this form 10IE shall be furnished electronically, and then sub rule 3 gives powers to the Director General of Systems to enable him to facilitate e-filing of this form 10I. So nothing much for us to discuss under sub rule 2 and sub rule 3. But then the important conclusion to be drawn is, if a SSC, that is an individual or HUF, wishes to opt into the concessional tax regime under 115 BAC, then he is required to file a form under Rule 21 AG, sub rule 1, and that form is form 10IE. Having said this, we'll have an interesting observation in the form 10IE itself. So our conclusion up till this point, our reading of law up till this point tells us that both categories of SSCs, that is a SSC with business income and a SSC without business income, both categories of SSC have to follow this prescribed manner, and that prescribed manner, that is the Rule 21 AG, also tells us that a person under subsection 5 will have to file form 10IE. But then a look at form 10IE will surprise you, because the form reads and says that it is a form meant only for option to be exercised under clause 1 of subsection 5. Clause 1 of subsection 5, if you want to recall, refers to a SSC with income under the head business or profession. That's a business SSC. The question that arises is, if a business SSC will file form 10IE, and if form 10IE is not available to a non-business SSC, how should a non-business SSC opt into 115 BAC? Now that answer surprisingly is given to us in the E form 10I. Of late, it's been a trend, it's been a fashion, no? The legal form differs from the E form. So what is available in the E avatar of the form varies from what is available in the form which is actually there in the statute. So if you were to look at the E form which is available on the income tax portal, there the department tells us, in case you don't have business income, you are not required to file form 10IE. You can exercise the option under 115 BAC while filing return of income in ITR 1 or ITR 2, as the case may be. Now, this is surprising and disturbing, because this is contrary to the law that we've just read. But let's bear in mind, rules are subordinate to the act and forms are subordinate to the rules. A form cannot override the rules, nor can it override the act. And the act and the rules that we have read clearly tell us that the prescribed manner is applicable not just to a business SSC, it is also applicable to a non-business SSC. So you'll find this prescribed manner in the header of the section and not within clause 1. At the same time, if you were to read Rule 21 AG, Rule 21 AG also refers to provisions of subsection 5. It does not go on to say provisions of subsection 5 clause 1. Provisions of subsection 5 would mean clause 1 and clause 2. That is a business SSC as well as a non-business SSC. So a reading of the rules and the act indicate to us that the form 10IE is required to be filed both by a business SSC and by a non-business SSC. But then the way department is looking at it, the way department is implementing this, appears that form 10IE is required to be filed only by a business SSC. A non-business SSC is not required to file form 10IE. He will exercise his option to opt for 115 BAC by simply ticking on the checkbox available in form ITR 1 and form ITR 2. So the way they are reading it is, they are reading this prescribed manner to be applicable only to a business SSC, and for a non-business SSC, where the law which says the option has to be exercised along with the return of income, but rightly or wrongly, they are reading it as option to be exercised in the return of income, right? Now, right or wrong, as individual assessees and individual tax practitioners, there's nothing that we can do about it but to follow what is asked us to follow. You cannot fight with the system. By the system, I mean the online system. But definitely, collectively, as a professional body, KSCA can definitely make a representation before the Finance Ministry. And I would request KSCA to do it, to make a representation to the Finance Ministry to either amend Rule 21 AG and say that Form 10IE is applicable only to a SSE falling under Clause 1 of subsection 5, or come up with a circular clarifying the correct position of law and removing the confusions and the anxiety that is currently prevailing in our minds. Now, until that happens, in practice, the approach that we should follow, or the only resolution solution that we have available to ourselves is, please take a screenshot of this, keep it in your records. In case of a non-business SSE, don't file Form 10I. In fact, there's no way you can file a Form 10I for a non-business SSE. Opt for 115 BAC in the return itself and pray that a circular or a clarification from CBDT comes up at the earliest. The form in itself is a simple form. It asks for simple details like name, address, PAN, date of birth, nature of business. Nothing complicated, nothing worth discussing in the form in itself. And this form is meant for both opting into the scheme and also for opting out of the scheme. So if you, under clause 1, want to opt into the scheme, you will file a Form 10IE. Under proviso to subsection 5, if you want to opt out of the scheme, you will again file Form 10IE only. Okay, so with this, we are done with a read of the legal provisions under 115 BAC. I have a bunch of issues compiled. Post we going through these issues, we will open up for any further issues, any further questions, queries that we may have from the members. We'll quickly, in next 10 minutes, run through the issues and then we'll open up for Q&A. I will request all the members to put in their questions in the Q&A box provided to you. So issue number 1, my SSE has exempt share of profits from partnership firm. Would my SSE fall under clause 1 of subsection 5 or under clause 2 of subsection 5? Now clause 1 is a business SSE, clause 2 is a non-business SSE. Now the SSE has exempt share of profits from partnership firm. He has no interest, he has no salary. He only has exempt profits from partnership firm. Now is he a business SSE or a non-business SSE for the purpose of 115 BAC? In my personal view, he is a business SSE. He falls under clause 1 and he will have to file a Form 10I. The rationale being, clause 1 refers to income, any income under the head business or profession, any income from business or profession. It is not restricting itself to any taxable income from business or profession. Now, exempt profits from partnership firm is exempt, but it is charged under section 28 and exempted under section 10. So it is an item of income, although exempt, and exempt incomes are also incomes, and therefore a partner earning exempt share of profit from partnership firm would be a partner with business income falling under clause 1 of subsection 5. Issue number 2, current year business income is 5 lakhs and brought forward business loss is 5 lakh. So my net income is 0. Net income under the head PGBP is 0. Now, should I file Form 10IE? Am I covered under clause 1 or am I covered under clause 2? Again, my answer to this scenario would be you are an SSE covered under clause 1 and not clause 2. The moment you have any computation under the head income from business, I would consider you to be a business SSE and I would require you to file a Form 10IE. Right? The rationale being, see, look at it from a broader perspective. Now, what is the idea of restricting a business SSE from opting in and opting out? Why are we restricting the business SSE to stick on to the scheme once he's opted into the scheme? Because the year in which he opts into the scheme, there's a lot of carry forward adjustments that we are required to do, which are cumbersome and difficult to track, both from the SSE's perspective and more so from the department's perspective. So we do not want any business SSE from hopping in and hopping out of this section, and therefore the moment you have any income computation that is happening under section 28 to section 44, you are covered under clause 1 of subsection 5. SSE has reported loss from current year business operation. Is he a business SSE? Yes, definitely. Although the word used in clause 1 is income, but then income includes losses. Losses are nothing but negative incomes, and subsection 5 clause 1 is very much applicable in your case. I am a business SSE with a few thousands in savings under the new scheme. Should I opt for the new scheme? If you're a business SSE, you have to be very careful before committing yourself to the new scheme, because for a business SSE, it's a one-way ticket. If the benefit available to you in the current year is only few thousands, be very careful, be very conscious before jumping into this, because it could so be possible that in year 1 this scheme is beneficial to you, but in year 2, year 3 and year 4 the normal tax regime is much more beneficial to you. So while making a decision, don't just look at the tax benefit that you're deriving under the scheme for current year, but also have a projection for a reasonable number of years, let's say 2 or 3 years, and see what is your tax position in the subsequent years, and have an overall view of what benefit or loss are you going to derive from opting into the scheme. Also, let us bear in mind that the tax rates, the concessional tax rates available under this regime are hard-coded into 115 BAC, unlike the slab rates which are given to us under normal regime as part of Schedule to Finance Act. So we have a new table as part of Finance Act every year. Now, every year, whenever there is a change in the slab rate, will they also revise the concessional tax rates given in 115 BAC? We don't know. There's no commitment as such from the government. Let's not forget what the government did to corporate SSEs with regards to 115 BA. 115 BA is also a similar concessional tax regime applicable to a domestic manufacturing company introduced way back in 2016. So in 2016, they came up with 115 BA to say pay tax at 25%, but forego certain benefits, forego certain exemptions and deductions, which at that point of time seemed very exciting, because at that point of time, a company would otherwise pay tax at 30%. So they offered a 5% saving. They showed a 5% benefit, and a lot of companies went into 115 BA. But then what has happened over the years? Over the years, this 30% regular rate of tax has fallen down to 25% for 90% of corporate SSEs. SSEs with less than 400 to turnover today pays 25%, with all the exemptions, all the deductions, all the allowances which are denied to 115 BA company, which also pays tax at the rate of 25%. So for a business SSE, I would be a little conservative. I would be a little hesitant to jumping into 115 BAC. For a non-business SSE, of course, there's no trouble. Even if there is a saving of few hundreds, it's worth jumping into the scheme, because this jump for a non-business SSE is only a jump for that year. And in year 2, he will again have an option to either follow this scheme or follow the existing normal tax regime. Can I file ITR before filing Form 10IE and yet claim benefit of 115 BAC? The answer is no. If you're filing ITR 3, ITR 4, you have to quote in the ITR the acknowledgement number and date of filing 10IE. So you will first have to file Form 10IE, and then you will have to file the Form ITR 3 and ITR 4. It's a different matter altogether that we are currently not able to file that. It's the system currently does not seem to be accepting ITR 3s and ITR 4s with 115 BAC as an option. Next, if an SSE files Form 10IE before due date under 139(1) and uploads his return and say in ITR 3 after due date, will he still be eligible for benefit on 115 BAC? The answer would be yes, because the only requirement under subsection 5 clause 1 is he should have followed the prescribed manner. That is, he should have filed Form 10IE, and the form should have been filed with before due date under 139(1). The return can be filed under 139(1) or under 139(4) or 139(5). There's no restriction with regards to a business SSE. So a business SSE, if he files his Form 10IE before due date and files the ITR after due date, he will still be eligible for the benefit of 115 BAC. But then the same cannot be said to a non-business SSE, because the way department reads it is the option to exercise 115 BAC by a non-business SSE has to be made in the return of income, which will have to be filed before due date under 139(1). So a non-business SSE cannot file a return under 139(4), a belated return, and still claim 115 BAC benefit. So that answers the question number C. Question number D. Are there any other consequences of opting under 115 BAC other than what we have discussed? There is one more consequence of opting for 115 BAC. A SSE who has opted for 115 BAC shall not be required to pay AMT, alternate minimum tax. But then please bear in mind, if there is any AMT credit that he is carrying forward, that AMT credit would also lapse. Can option under 115 BAC exercised at the time of assessment? Definitely no. The option has to be exercised before due date under 139 subsection 1. Can the delay in opting 115 BAC be controlled? Definitely, yes. Under 119 subsection 2 clause B, CBDT has the power to condone delay wherever it feels there is genuine hardship. So if you are in a position to build out a case of genuine hardship, make an application to CBDT, your delay should be condoned. What are the consequences of the option becoming invalid? The consequence of option becoming invalid is the rates given to you under 115 BAC will not apply. Normal income tax rates will apply. The allowances, benefits denied to you under subsection 2 will now become available to you. But then the allowances, deductions which have lapsed in the previous year will not revive. So those set of benefits which you have already foregone in the earlier years will lapse, and there will not be a revival of those options which have lapsed, those benefits which have lapsed in the earlier year. How will TDS on salary provisions work where employee opts for 115 BSc? So we had a circular on 13th of April 2020, circular C1 of 2020, wherein CBDT has clarified employee who wishes to opt under 115 BAC shall intimate his intent to the employer. There's no specific format prescribed. He just has to give it in writing to his employer that I wish my TDS to be withheld considering the provisions of 115 BAC, and the employer will do TDS as per the beneficial tax slab available over here. But please bear in mind, this option is available only to an employee who does not have business income. So if you have business income, your salary TDS necessarily has to be done under normal tax regime and not under concessional tax regime. Also bear in mind, merely because the employee has declared to his employer that I will be opting for 115 BAC does not mean that in his return he has to opt under 115 BAC. At the time of filing the return, he can change his mind and he may as well jump back to the normal tax regime without declaring his income under 115 BAC. D, this is critical. By mistake, I have filed Form 10IE for a business SE. Can I now opt out of 115 BAC by once again filing Form 10I? As we read, to opt into 115 BAC, you have to file Form 10I. To opt out of 115 BAC, you have to once again file a Form 10I. So if by mistake my article uploads Form 10I for a business SEC, wherein it should not have been uploaded, and what is the solution available to me? Can I once again file Form 10I to opt out of it? The answer would be no. The answer would be no, because proviso to subsection 5 very clearly says your option to opt out is not in the year in which you opted in. The option to opt out is only in a subsequent year. So if by mistake your office has filed a Form 10IE for a business SSC, it is end of story for that assessment year. For that assessment year, you will have to follow 115 BAC, or you will have to take the risk of violating the provisions of subsection 2 and be denied 115 BAC for the lifetime. In Form ITR2 that I filed for non-business SSC, I inadvertently opted for 115 BAC. Can I revise my ITR and untick the option under 115 BAC in the IT return? This, in my view, is a fair and reasonable proposition, because for a non-business SSC, the way we understand, the way we are looking at it now is your option to exercise concessional tax regime has to be made in the return of income. So if in the return of income you have ticked 115 BAC and filed the return of income, in my view, you can always revise your return for the same year and untick that. Your revised return should replace your original return, and then your income should be computed under normal tax provisions without any further consequences. If in the original return benefit under 115 BAC had not been claimed, can it be claimed in the revised return of income? Now I'll answer this question for a business SSC and non-business SSC separately. If a business SSC has not claimed the concessional tax regime in the original return, he can claim it in the revised return, in the belated return, in any return, as long as Form 10I has been filed within due date under 139(1). But then a non-business SSC has to claim his option under 115 BAC by ticking that checkbox in the return of income, and that return of income should be under 139(1). So if the original return is filed under 139(4), a revised return will not help you as a non-business SSC to claim the benefit of 115 BAC. But if the original return was under 139(1), wherein concessional tax benefit was not claimed, And then now you're revising your return under 139.5. Supreme Court way back in 1973 in the case of Dhanpur Sugar Mills has told us the revised return will replace the original return. It will go and sit into the shoes of the original return. So a return filed under 139.5 will be as good as a return filed under 139.1 if the original return was under 139.1. If the original return is under 139.4, your revised return will also be as though filed under 139.4. So original return filed within due date, benefit was not claimed, you can revise it in my view after the due date and claim the benefit under 115 BAC. So that is the legal logic, legal belief that I have on the concept, on the aspect of revising a return for a non-business SSC. But then for all the legal aspects that we've discussed, practically in practice, you try to claim 115 BAC in a revised return. The portal currently does not permit you to do so. So it will throw out an error. Option for the new tax regime cannot be opted after due date under 139.1. The due date is not latched, but then the way the system is presently reading it is only if the return is under 139.1, 115 BAC benefit is being allowed. If the return is under 139.5 or 139.4, we are yet to reach the stage of 139.4, but if the return is under 139.5, the portal is presently denying you the benefit of 115 BAC, which in my view is incorrect. Again, a to-do task for KSCA. A representation on this point should also be made, in my view, before the appropriate officials. The last issue before we throw up the session for Q&A, can Form 10I be revised? There is nothing in the Act, nothing in the rule. There is no specific provision enabling revision of Form 10I, but at the same time, there is no specific provision prohibiting revision of Form 10I. Now, in the past, we've seen a number of forms, a number of returns being allowed to be revised even without there being a specific provision under the law permitting providing for a revision. Classic example for this would be your TDS returns. For TDS returns, we've been filing for ages, but then the legal provision officially permitting revision of TDS return came only by way of Finance Act 2014. Finance Act 2014 added a proviso to section 200 permitting revision of TDS return. But then even before 2014, we've been revising TDS return and department has been accepting it. Another very relevant example that I can use for Form 3CD, we've seen cases of Form 3CD being revised in the past, but it is now only on 1st of April 2021, wherein Rule 6G has been amended and now officially a Form 3CD can be revised. The point is, the department has been kind and considerate enough to allow revision of forms even without there being a specific provision for revision of the forms. Continuing with that, they are permitting presently to revise Form 10IE also. But then this revision of Form 10IE comes with a caveat. If you're trying to revise Form 10IE, this is the warning message that the system is going to throw out to you. I'll read this. You have already uploaded Form 10IE for the chosen year on 31st of August. If you again upload Form 10IE, the earlier filed form would be treated as non-actionable and the form filed now would be treated as valid, and the date of filing shall be current date with all consequences of law attached. I don't know from where is this interpretation coming from. This kind of a revision we've never seen. There's been no precedence of such a revision in the Act ever, at least none to my knowledge. The common understanding always that we've had with regards to revised return is a revised return always replaces the original return. A revised form always replaces the original form. Take a simple example of a TDS return. Now, let's say I have filed a TDS return on the due date. A month later, if I were to revise the TDS return, do I have to pay 234E fine for that 1 month period? Definitely no. So my revised return will not count as a new return filed after 1 month. It will simply go and sit in the place of my original return. This is the concept which is universally followed for all revised forms and all revised returns. But then for some reason, I don't know how they've chosen to treat Form 10IE revision differently. I sometimes wonder the Director General systems is what some other version of income tax law other than what we normally read. And I also wonder from where is all this power granted to the Director General of Systems. To me, the position of DG systems is even more powerful than CBDT sometimes even more powerful than Parliament for the kind of implications that their decisions make in the life of the assessees and tax professionals. So there's nothing that we can do individually as of now. Again, I would request KSE on this particular aspect to make representations to the ministry and have this clarified from the ministry as to what should be the official position of a revised Form 10I. So with this, I have concluded my set of slides. We will now look into any Q&As, any questions that members might have for us.
Yes, we have CA Uday Kiran on the forum reading out the questions. Over to you, Kiran.
Thank you, Shashikala. Firstly, I would like to thank CA Deepak Chopra sir for his in-depth analysis and decoding of the Bare Act of provisions of 115 BAC. So we have few questions here. So due to the want of time, we have 15 minutes. So I'll be reading out one by one. So you just give your views or comments on the questions what has been raised. Firstly, as per the latest amendment in the budget 2021, the senior citizens above 75 years are not required to file the return of income. And they're required to file the return of income in case they are having income from pension and if they are having any interest received from the bank. So how will the bank deduct the TDS according to which regime, as per the old regime or new regime, is the question.
Sir, I would say this is another to-do task for KSCA. Please raise this before Finance Ministry because they are the only people who can answer this question. That's a practical, a very valid issue raised by you, sir. And this is something that the department will have to clarify.
Okay, sir. And the second question is what we have got is senior citizens above 60 years and super senior citizens above 80 years, their slab rates is 3 lakh and 5 lakh. So in case of this 115 BAC tax regime, the slab rate starts from 2.5 lakh. The basic exemption limit is 2.5 lakh, and they say for the individual, they have not anything clearly specified about whether the senior citizens how it has to be treated. What is your view on that?
Senior citizens do not have any further benefit, extra benefit under 115 BAC. So if a normal SSE is gaining a benefit of 75,000 under concession tax regime, a senior citizen would have, I think, 62,500 as benefit under concession tax regime.
Okay. And one more question what we have got is, do we need to file Form 10IE each year while filing our return of income, or is it a one-time form which has to be filed at the time of opting?
For business SSE, it is a one-time form. For non-business SSE, the way department is reading it presently is don't file Form 10IE at all. So you'll have to opt in the return of income, and that opt-in will have to be an annual exercise for a non-business SSE.
So for business SSE, it is a one-time form.
For business SSE, it is a one-time form. You file it once, it will apply to you for your lifetime.
Suppose, and the next question is, what if an assessee is having a salaried income as well as a business income, whether Form 10IE is applicable, whether he has to file, or how to treat this situation?
The moment you have any income under the head PGBP, profits or gains for business or profession, Form 10IE has to be filed by you.
Okay. So and the one more question what we have got is, in case of house property loss is not allowed to be carried forward. In the same way, what will happen in case of derivative losses? If we have got any loss from derivatives is business income. Derivatives is under the business income. So loss under the derivatives, how should
so that would be as per normal tax regime. There's no variation given to us under the concessional tax regime. Because you spoke of house property loss, there's one point that I missed. I just recalled. Thanks for reminding me on that. Now, there could be a peculiar scenario wherein, let's say, a SSE has loss under the head income from house property to the tune of 10 lakh rupees. Now, under normal tax regime, the assessee would be allowed a set-off of only 2 lakh rupees, and 8 lakh rupees is something that he will carry forward. So 71 subsection 3A restricts current year set-off of house property loss only to the extent of 2 lakh. 8 lakh is something that you'll have to carry forward. Now, what happens to an assessee who opts for 115 BAC? 2 lakh will not be allowed as set-off thanks to subsection 2, clause 2, subclause B. Subsection 3 further goes on to say this loss which we have denied you a set-off will lapse. So 2 lakhs is going to lapse undoubtedly. What happens to the balance 8 lakh? The balance 8 lakhs, in my view, will allow to be carried forward and set off in subsequent years, because subsection 3 is going to lapse only that loss which is referred to in subsection 2 clause 2, and subsection 2 clause 2 read with section 71 subsection 3a is going to deny you current year set off of only 2 lakh and not full 10 lakh. So only 2 lakh would lapse, balance 8 lakh in my view should be available for set off and carry forward in subsequent years.
Subsequently. Sir, and the last question what we have got is, the new tax regime what has been introduced, won't it be discouraging the savings habit of the individuals, is what they're asking, because the most of the deductions what we have has been removed in this new tax regime. The most whatever the ETC deductions or the interest deduction what you're getting are completely removed. So won't it discourage the
It will discourage
savings
savings,
habit
but it
among
will
the
encourage spendings. So that spendings, in the view of it's just a policy matter for the government to decide. We as tax professionals only interpret what is told to us, but then the broader economic objective of this is to encourage spendings and boost the economy.
Okay. I think we have received, I've checked all the questions, we have answered everything. I would hand over to Shashikala for the vote of thanks.
Yes, so the Kiran, thank you for the help and assistance. Yeah, I really thank Shri Deepak Chopra for a wonderful seminar and throwing a light on Section 115 BAC. Thank you so much, sir, and having the time to attend the seminar in time as per the request of KCA. And I also thank CA Uday Kiran for assisting in the webinar as well. Also team members and everyone for attending the event and making it a grand success. Thank you everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you,
Thank
KCA,
you.
and
Thank
thank
you.
you all participants for this very patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you, sir.